So this week we are in our penultimate Alfred Hitchcock movie for the month. We decided to review Strangers on a Train. And the premise of the story is, just like it is, two strangers meet on a train in a kind of happenstance moment. One character is in this world, he's a famous tennis star. And the other guy is kind of, well, we don't know who he is, what he is, but he recognizes the tennis star and is like, oh, I'm a huge fan. And he seems kind of like one of those guys you meet and it's like, man, he's very talkative, very kind of an awkward guy, but nothing really weird about him. And he ends up kind of finding a way to talk about what he deduces through stuff that he's read in the newspaper, that this tennis star is leaving his wife and is looking to marry this other socialite who he's been that he's in love with. And he's like, well, it's like, have you ever thought about murder? And it's like, wouldn't it just be, there's some people you just kind of want to take out. And he kind of comes up with this, fantasy situation of how, like, oh, you probably would like to have your ex-wife taken out. And then, I really don't like my dad. The perfect murder would be if we killed each other's problem. And then, that way there's no connection. And the tennis star, who his name is was a Guy, and the other guy's name is Bruno. He can tell that the guy is a little bit like odd. He just kind of wants to get out of there, and he's like, yeah, sure, hey, yeah, whatever, you're right, absolutely. And he kind of walks off and thinks that that's it. There's nothing more to the story. But Bruno ends up hunting down his ex-wife and murders her, and stalks Guy the rest of the movie to try to get him to kill his father. And that's kind of like where the whole tension in the story of the movie takes place, is in this is the tension between these two characters.
Right. Yeah, because the character of Bruno, yes, I think in today's nomenclature, we kind of like categorize him as maybe disturbed, or maybe not all there. Because he might even be be considered on the spectrum of autism, because he's not able to properly connect and to socialize, because even though Guy was like humoring him and was like, yeah, sure, buddy, yeah, that'd be the best way. He took it as like, it's like, oh, well, we're in agreement then. So so I'm gonna go kill your wife for you. And and so I think that's some of like the like where the trouble like starts.
Right. And something else that we had talked about that we noticed in the movie is in the case of Guy Haynes, his ex-wife, it's kind of it's not that he was cheating on his wife. His wife was the one that was sleeping around with other people, had become impregnated by one of her other lovers.
Yeah, one of her gentleman callers.
Yeah, and she was extorting him for money and all this other stuff, and would not grant him the divorce that he had wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And but he had already moved on, because he's like, I'm done with her. And she is not really a good character in a sense. So but obviously he had no intention of, he's upset obviously, but he had no intention of killing her. And then in the case of Bruno, who just one of the creepiest villains in a movie in a while, that I've seen in a while. He he's, I would assume, in his 30s, maybe in his 40s. I didn't, they didn't really get into the age of either character.
Mm-hmm.
He lives at home. He's a wealthy man. He lives in his parents' home. Has a very unusual relationship with his mother, and his dad. Not necessarily in a harsh way, but it's like, you got to move out. You have to like get on with your life and make something yourself. And because of that, he is upset with his father and hates him. It's like, how dare he?
How dare he make me move out of his house that he paid for?
Right. And very in 1951, quite the leftist of today. He matches up with a lot of people I've known from.
Right. Yeah. He doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't do anything. He still. He gets handouts. He still lives with his parents.
Right. And so, in reality, like, his dad being the one that, he wants to have dead, there's really no reason for him to be.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like his dad was, like, abusive.
He wasn't even verbally abusive.
Yeah, all he said was, like, well, I think it's time for you to move out. Yeah, and that was like it. I mean, if they had, done something to establish the jerkiness of his father, then I'd understand, but in all indications, it doesn't seem like his father was that much of a jerk to him, except for maybe being a good dad and saying like, hey, maybe it's time for you to get a job, or maybe it's time for you to move out. Be your own man.
Right, and and kind of like our last story of just this unhinged happenstance contact. It's kind of like that. That's the tension in the whole movie is. Bruno ends up going off and killing Miriam, who's Guy's former wife. And when Guy is like, what did you do? And he's obviously, like, they come to suspect him as being the one that killed his ex-wife. And then Guy hounds him. Is like, well, we had a deal. You're crisscross. You're supposed to kill my dad now, and keeps like sending him maps and
messages and keeps calling him and like kind of creepily or ominously like watch him.
Right, and tries to insert himself in the life of the people that he knows, and you start and kind of like you think of it like, man, this guy is like a complete crazy person. And what really I think does him in is when what was it, the lady that Guy is with currently, Ann Morton, her sister looks like Guy's ex-wife, and when he's kind of doing his display of his hypothetical situations, he goes into that trance of like whatever joy or situation,
kind of like that bloodlust. It'd be like a bloodlust.
Yeah.
And like he's like he like keeps imagining that it's like he keeps seeing that woman Miriam, and it's like, and I guess he wants to experience that murder again, and so he like, even though he's not actually strangling the sister, he's like looking at, like, it's kind of like that transference, like kind of like I guess the kind of idea of when young men or men in general masturbate to pornography.
Right.
But it's like, but in this case, it'd be murder. So he's like, he's like,
Yeah.
he's murder baiting. He's murder baiting basically.
Oh man. It was. Were there any parts of the movie that you maybe didn't care for, that you think could have been better, or that you wish you had were a little bit different in the movie?
Well, I think I really like this movie. I think I enjoy this Hitchcock movie more than even some of the others that we watched this month. But the only criticism I would have right now is the pacing, especially in the beginning, where Bruno first meets Guy, and then he kind of he's like kind of inserting himself. It's just like it's like the pacing I think is too fast. Where it feels very it doesn't feel organic or natural the way Bruno's like talking to him and like trying to like feel him out, and and it wasn't it's funny because it seems like Bruno was kind of waiting for Guy, like he knew Guy was going to be on this train, and he knew because he's relatively intelligent, he was able to deduce everything about Guy and like his situation and things like that. So I think like if this really was like a happenstance kind of meeting, then I wish it was paced out a little bit more to help make it feel more organic.
Right. Yeah, I would agree that's probably my lone problem with the movie, is just that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that situation drawn out, where because more than likely, because Bruno, we know, is he is deranged. At best, he's deranged. And he's always kind of, as his mom was saying, he's like, yeah, he always comes up with these odd situations and hypotheticals, and he's just he's a strange boy, but I love him anyways.
Right.
And the thing is, people like that, like it, and he obviously targets someone who he knows from the newspapers. He's because Guy is a very famous tennis player,
right?
And it would have been, if they shown more of Bruno, more than likely targeting Guy, is kind of this
right, yeah,
about all the details of his life, and then kind of meeting, kind of happened to meet him on the train. I think that would have completed the movie a little bit, and it's like I said, this is a nitpick, because I would say of the movies that we've watched so far in the I mean, there's so many in the library that Hitchcock has done, but of the ones that we've watched so far this month, this is the best so far, in my opinion, because that tension of Guy trying to escape this guy, and yet at the same time also preserve his reputation. Mm-hmm. There's this real tense atmosphere that is created, and you're kind of you feel for Guy. You want him to escape this man, and Bruno is he's a real creepy villain. Probably the creepiest of the villains that we've seen in all the Hitchcock films so far.
True.
Which
I agree with that.
might be topped by next week when we get into our last Hitchcock film. But the ones we've seen so far, this one really just the tense nature of the film, blew me away. I was like, this is such a really good storytelling. But yeah, like that one nitpick, it would be like, yeah, I would have liked to see how he happened to gain all this information about how Bruno gained all this information about Guy Haines, because he didn't come by that, randomly on the train. Like, he clearly had
clearly he was like following this
guy.
guy. Yeah, and like the setup, like, because the title of the movie and like the initial like setup where like like Bruno and Guy, they both ride at the same train station. And they both board the train, like, and them meeting by chance, just doesn't seem right because of everything that Bruno knew about Guy. And it did, and I mean, maybe it was just maybe it was just the way the actor chose to perform it, but it made it seem like Bruno had was keeping an eye on this guy and like no and was like oh, like this is the guy that I can use. He's high profile enough where like he has something to lose. Also, like it seemed more calculated than as opposed to like the premise or what the title suggests of the movie, Strangers on a Train. It's like these two guys and like and just one of them happens to be like this kind of kooky, crazy person who's like thinking about killing his dad. And like and I it was interesting because I was actually led to believe more like that Guy's character also had a bigger gripe. Like he was like to the point where like that murder was actually an option,
right?
As opposed to what I found out where like he was just like this decent guy, and yeah, he was going through like the frustration of like his wife stepping out on him and then like backing out on the agreed upon divorce, and more or less like he was like frustrated and angry, and what he might have said like oh I just want to wring her neck might have been more said out of as venting, frustration, right, and venting, as opposed to like premeditated murder.
Right, and I think that's the way it was played in the film too. Like it wasn't a
right.
I never felt like Guy really wanted to kill her.
Right. Yeah, and I think like only hearing about this movie like second or third hand, that was the kind of expectation that I was led to have. Like like two of these men are both put to pushed to the point where they murder was actually an option for their circumstances, but it turns out that it was just it was just a crazy person and just a frustrated guy who's having a not his life was just kind of in the shitter.
Right, and it's it's kind of of all the trains in all the world, you had to step into mine.
Yeah. Although, yeah, it was. I also liked at the end like the Hitchcock like humor, where like everything was resolved and Guy was with his girl, and then all of a sudden like this guy sitting across from them is like, hey, aren't you Guy whatsoever? And then they both look at each other and then like they immediately get up and like move to the next car.
Initially, he goes to answer. He's like, and he walks off. It's like,
he's about to answer. It's like, well, yes, I am. And then like they look at each other. It's like, let's not step on any more landmines and just
exactly
get out of there.
Yeah, it's such a great. It's a great way to end it. I think similar to last week's film when we watched The Man Who Knew Too Much, the Jimmy Stewart version.
Right, yeah.
And at the end where they kind of ended it on a very amusing level where it's like, oh, sorry we took so long. We had to go pick up our son.
Yeah, where they they kept because they didn't tell their friends to leave. They just like, oh, like we just have to take care of something really fast. And so they're like, the friends, being I guess really good friends, that they actually stayed and like waited for them. to the point like they fell asleep. You know,
Yeah,
and it's just
man,
like, oh yeah, sorry, like we have to go pick up our son. It's like, did I? Like, no. And it's like a kind of like a wink and a nudge to like the audience because they know what was going on, but not like the friends.
yeah, it's So yeah, I think it was a great way to end it. This is definitely the movies we've seen. Was the most tense, and
Right, and I think because I think even like the scene where a guy is like playing tennis, and then you see Bruno on the train going back to the city that that guy is from to go and try to plant evidence and frame him for his wife's murder. Just
right,
because like he didn't want to leave like right away because then like that would have been too suspicious. To the cops that are kind of watching over him. And so, like, he's playing like this. He's like, "Oh, I gotta finish this game in 3 sets, and then I can get out of here."
He's
And
playing like his life depends on it, and even like the announcer's like, man, he's such a usually a cool and calculated patient player, but he's playing with a passion we've never seen before.
Yeah, like, he's taking a lot of risks here. Like he's like he's usually a methodical player, but now he's just being wild and unpredictable. And you see like the intensity, like, and you see like that drive that he's like, oh, I have to win this game so I can get out of here and like stop this guy from planting evidence to ruin my life.
Right, and it just that climax of the film, the tension builds so strongly between those two characters, and it was just
and
it was
even with like the little hiccup on Bruno's end where he's kind of overconfident. He just stepped out of the train station. He's like overconfident, and he's playing with like the lighter, which is the evidence that he's gonna use to go and frame Guy. And he's too overconfident. He's like playing around with the lighter, and he drops it through a grate.
Yeah.
Kind of slowing him up, and then like you can see like in his, it's really interesting because like the grate doesn't look that, like the grate openings don't look that good, but it's funny he was able to fit his whole arm through down to it,
I did find
and he was like still able to like push like keep pushing forward to like the point where he could like reach it all the way to like the bottom of the drain.
Bruno must have had super skinny arms.
Yeah, or like he's fucking Stretch Armstrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, but even with like the kind of like the silliness of like of that, like where you just even though like it's not that far deep, it's not that far down initially, he's like able to like touch it, and then like he knocks it down again. But then he's still all able to like put his arm all the way through the grate opening and like retrieve the lighter. Even with like the silliness of that, I think it was still like a well played a suspense element. It's like, oh shoot, like is he gonna be able to reach the lighter, before Guy wins his game and gets onto the train to go and stop him? It's like, I think the tension build there, I think, was still effective.
Yeah. And because I had actually, this is a Hitchcock film that I had never seen before. Kind of like it. Well, it's the most of the ones that we've watched so far, I've actually haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Though the the idea or the kind of somewhat the premise of this film, if you've seen the movie like Horrible Bosses.
Right.
It's kind of a similar idea, although it's not strangers on a train. It's 3 different friends who all have terrible.
Yeah. I mean, same kind of like premise where like these guys
do each other's murders.
Yeah, do each other's murders, and also more comedically. I remember the show Modern Family did like their take on it, where like 2 of the characters, their brother and sister Mitch and Claire. They both had like these unpleasant truths that they had to like drop on like their significant others.
Right.
And so like they did, the brother Mitchell suggested that they do like a murder, strangers on a train deal where they each, drop the unpleasant truth on their respective significant others, or not like each other's significant others.
Right. Yeah. So definitely a film that has been parodied in in modern stuff. But man, I really really like this film a lot.
This is again, out of the Hitchcock movies that we've seen, I think it was the most enjoyable for me.
Yeah, hands down. This has been the most enjoyable one that we've seen this month.
All right. Okay. Well then, I guess we can get.
I'll let you give your star rating first.
Okay. I give this a solid 4.
I might be a little bit higher than you this time. I'm actually going 4.5 on this one. Mainly because that I would actually give this a 5-star rating if, like I said, but that one kind of I would have liked to see Bruno's story get kind of stretched out a little bit, like we talked about. That's the one nitpick I really have. Other than that, great acting, great, just really great film overall. I think this is a must see.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely recommend this to anybody and everybody.
I will definitely. This is a film that I could probably watch several times and still really enjoy it.
Same here. All right, there you have it, folks. Our ratings. I give it a solid 4, and Robert gives it a 4.5.